So today I'm going to be covering the 3 top ways, my favorite ways of overcoming anxiety. The exact 3-step system that I use to go from just total rock bottom, like I tried to kill myself, didn't think I was worth living type situation, to, yep, I don't care what life throws at me, I can take it, I absolutely rock, and no one's going to change that opinion of me. And so it's really easy. It's just a 3-step system. So I'm really excited about sharing that. And I've also got the Ring of Power, which is a cool little thing that anyone who's looked into NLP will probably, or done some NLP training, will realize what it is. But it's a really cool thing that I think it's always a nice thing to do. And I've done it with quite a few people, and I use it myself from time to time. So I'm really stoked to be sharing this information with you. And I hope you guys find it really useful. As I said, there's not going to be any sales pitch. This is something that I've put on especially for the Australian nerd fighters and anyone else who's watching this. You know, yay for you, you get some awesome free content. So yeah. So a little bit about me to start with is my name's Caleb Upton. I'm originally from New Zealand, and when I was 5, my parents split up. When I was 15, my mum moved islands from the North Island to the South Island. When I was 16, I moved out of home, and about 4 or 5 months later, got asked to leave the place I was staying because I was falling off the rails. I was self-harming, and they didn't know how to deal with it. So I then moved in with an acquaintance, not a friend, but an acquaintance. And I just started spiraling down more and more and more. And it got to the point where I thought all of my friends sort of hated me. Really, they didn't really like me. I don't know why they hung out with me, to be honest. I was, being forced to go see the school guidance counselor, who referred me to a therapist, and the therapist wanted me to take medication, but I refused. I don't know why. I'd done some research, and in hindsight, I was potentially bipolar. I would have these lows, and they were really low, like just horrendously low. But my highs were they were freaking awesome. And so, it was bang, back and forth. And I think that's why they wouldn't put me on mood stabilizers, is to bring it sort of back into a normal range. But I didn't want to let go of the highs. I liked them too much. I figured they were worth the lows. Until my friend was at the movies and invited me 5 minutes before the movie started. And as I got there, I saw him hooking up with my ex-girlfriend of about a week. That was when I snapped, and I just went home, I slashed my wrists, and then I biked 7 or 8K to go throw myself off a cliff. Fortunately, a friend kept me on the phone before I left home long enough that when I went to my dad's, which was out towards the cliff, to grab his big kitchen knife, he was actually home. He literally just pulled into the driveway. He would have passed me as I was getting to his house. And I just didn't have it in myself, I guess, to kill myself after seeing him. I knew that he wouldn't deal with it because he wasn't in a great place to start with. So I didn't, and I'm extremely grateful to that friend for picking up that something was up over the phone. So if any of you are actually in that place, call Lifeline, call a friend, talk to someone. That's not what this is for. This is for how to go from, yeah, okay, I need to make a change, been there, I've done that, it didn't work for me, whatever. I now need to make a change. So that was my defining moment. That was my crucible, I guess, in a way, where I realized that I needed to do something, otherwise I was going to end up hurting a lot of people around me, and including myself. So what I did, and I'm going to launch straight into this, is I had done some research into emotions, I guess, and previously I'd done some experiments with sleep deprivation and the impacts that that has on your state and your mental health. And I'd worked out that, I'd worked out that if you revivify a state for about 16 to 18 seconds, that is sufficient for a complete chemical cascade to wash over your body and to actually change your mood, to embody the new mood. So let me break that down for you. Essentially, feelings are electrochemical things. I'm not a biologist. They, we have a feeling, and it, sometimes it's here, and sometimes it's in our gut, or maybe sometimes it's in the head, or wherever. We have feelings, and depending on what they are, we feel them in different places. But in order for us to feel them, something has to happen chemically and electrically in our body, because they are interpretations. Everything is an interpretation. So there's an electrochemical reaction that occurs in the brain. I believe it's the hypothalamus that sets off a cascade of protein chains that absolutely flood your body. And these are feelings. There are ones for happy, sad, mopey, laughy. I'm not going to name the 7 dwarfs. The, rage, love, lust, arousal, anger, hate. I didn't say those already. Jealousy, although that's a combination of things. Anyway, and so I knew that with 16 seconds of effort, I could change my mood. The problem was I didn't know how to do that. I had done some personal development. Mum had sent me along to the Landmark Forum for young people, and then for teens when I was 7, I think, and when I was 13, respectively. And the only thing I remember from that was that you always have a choice. No matter what is going on, you always have a choice. And it could be to choose the situation or not. And, in those situations, sure, it's not much of a choice, but often rolling with the punches is a better option. So I knew I had to choose to feel a different way, basically. So I would be doing whatever I was doing, and I'd start to feel worse than normal, which was, pretty average at the best of times with this. So normal for me was maybe here. Most people, it would have been about here. So I would be feeling about here, and I would realize I was starting to go down. And there are different signs. Everyone has their own signs, triggers for when they're not feeling great. And what I would do is I would stop. I'd take a deep breath, and I would hit a countdown timer on my watch, not this, but a watch I had, for 20 seconds. And then I would close my eyes, and I would remember the happiest memories I could. So right now I've got my wedding day coming to mind. It's fantastic. And I mean, you can see me. So good. I should do this more often. So by reliving it, by taking your mind there to your memory of a good time, after 16 seconds, it's all it takes. I did 20 just because I wanted to be sure. I knew that if I didn't do this, that I would go to a horrible place. So for me, it was kind of do or die. So for that 20 seconds, until my watch beeped, that was all I focused on. And up front, it wasn't easy, right? It was not easy to start with, but I persisted. And if it didn't work the first time, I'd do it again, and I'd do it again. And sometimes, you know, it took 5 or 6 times for me to actually completely feel good. And the reason for that is not that the system didn't work. It's that I wasn't prepared to let go of my negativity or my anxiety that I was feeling about the situation I was going into. And I know this because when I was younger, I was doing a piano competition recital thing. And leading up to it, I was freaked, absolutely freaked. And everyone was telling me, you'll be okay. Just, you know, breathe, calm, relax, whatever, you'll be fine. And I couldn't. I did not know how to let go at that point in my life. You know, I was only like 9 or something. But the moment they called my name, it was irrelevant. It was completely irrelevant how I felt. I had to perform. I mean, that's how it sort of formed in my head. So I had sweaty palms. They disappeared like that. And I went out and I performed, ended up winning, which was cool. But what that taught me was that you have to commit. You really have to commit, and you have to be prepared to let go. And a lot of people, they like what they get out of being in a negative space, whether it's anxiety, depression, obesity, whatever it is. You know, they're getting something from it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. And that's not an attack. I'm not saying, you know, oh, you're socially anxious and you get pity out of it. Which, you know, that doesn't actually make sense, because if you have social anxiety, you would be uncomfortable being around people, and you need to be around people to get pity. So it doesn't work. But you will get something, and you need to be prepared to let that go. And it could just simply be, you know, I'm used to feeling this way. Feeling good feels different, and different is strange. Okay, would you rather feel strange and good, or normal and not good? You know? So the 3-step system is basically recognize where you're at, recognize that you are in a negative space, and that's okay. Okay, it's really, really important that you acknowledge that. If you don't acknowledge it, it's really hard to change it, because basically you're in denial and you're just doing positive thinking, and it's like, here's your positive thinking. Everything's good, everything's good, everything's good, everything's good. Life is fantastic. And here you've got like, it's shit. My boss is going to fire me. My wife hates me. You got all this negative. It's not. It's like putting ice cream on top of bad corned beef or something. I don't know. So you got to recognize where you're at. You then need to break your state. And for me, that was as simple as stopping. It was a conscious stop. And you see, when I say stopping, I'm actually going back. And if you watch, Tony Robbins has a great video about, I think it's degrees of success, or incantations. It's to do with incantations, I think. He's got a lot of good videos. Anyway, he talks about the difference in success being this and this, this and this. And for me, my break state was stopping, taking that deep breath. That told me that I am now demarking from my old behavior and going to a new behavior. Then you need to build up the new state. So recognize where you're at, break your state, and build up the new state. And that's a 16, 20 seconds. I mean, you can do it for longer. No one's going to hurt you. I can't guarantee that. No one's going to judge you, in my opinion. They shouldn't be anyway, for spending more time feeling good. So if you want to spend 3 minutes building up all of the happiest memories you've ever had in your life, because that makes you feel good, then go for it, because you feel good. And feeling good rocks, right? Like, it's a good thing. That's probably why you're watching this. You want to feel better more often. So going back to confidence, I had quite a few situations where you know, if you asked me what confidence was, I would have really struggled to tell you. I was just so far removed from that. And I was so buried in my own little world of, I'm not good enough. that I couldn't connect with confidence. So I had to bridge it. I had to go from feeling like I was worthless and the world was better off without me to, you know what, some people do enjoy being around me, or at least they did in the past. And then that became normal. And then from some people like me to it's okay for people to like me. And that was a big step for me. That was like, if going back to the scale, like most people live up here, I was down here. For me, like some people had fun with me in the past to it's okay for people to like me. Like that was a massive jump. There's a lot of light. I might just see if I can kill the light behind me. So I went from, thank you webcam, that did nothing. Oh well. Went from, you know, so it's okay for, some people kind of enjoyed being around me. Like I have references for that in the past, like walks with family when I was younger and stuff like that. Like obviously they didn't hate me, otherwise they would have left me in the car or something. So that was a little bump, but then it's okay for people to like me actually being okay with it. That was a big step. And it may not be a big thing for everyone, but for me, that was kind of the tipping point. That's what gave me enough to go, oh, I could actually get to here. I could get to where most people are. It's not that big a jump. And so from there, I went, you know what? I actually like myself. So I had to find references for where I'd done things for myself, where I'd looked after myself, where I had done something special for myself, where I'd spent time doing something that I wanted to do, not just what other people wanted me to do. And I would say if if you're struggling with feeling confident and comfortable with who you are, I would hazard a guess that you've potentially lost touch with who you are. You may not know who you are. You know that the person that you are now isn't how you want to be, but that's not who you are. So, there's some soul searching to do there, perhaps. And these things that I'm going to share very soon will help you feel good, and you can definitely get to a place. So I got to normal, but then I went up. I actually went higher. I worked quite hard to make my normal state of being better than most people I knew. So that resulted in lots of weird things where people were like, how come you're so happy all the time? You used to hate life. And I would go, yep. And because I didn't want to go back through that process to have to explain it at the time, because I wasn't solidified. But it was an interesting experience for me, going from one polar extreme to the other one. Bipolar again. Labels, fun. So take it in steps, right? And if you don't know who you are, if you are not comfortable with yourself, that's okay. It's part of growing up. It's like, your teenage years, it's all about finding your own identity, pushing your parents away, or at least splitting off from them to identify yourself as an individual. I've got 3 kids, and the eldest is 7. He's currently going through the logical phase, apparently, which is between like 6 and 8, ballpark 7, where they start using logic and reasoning, which lines up with the first crystallization. He is really confident when he's with us. We engage with him intellectually quite a lot. When he's with his mum, sometimes he is, sometimes he's not, and I don't know what's going on there. But it's really interesting to see it in a 7-year-old, that he's creating his identity based on the feedback he gets from his parents. And we all do this, right? That's how we learn. So if you don't know where you are, it's okay. You're allowed not to know. Just keep asking questions. Keep finding out, exploring. Some people never find out who they are. There's a brilliant write-up by a nurse that looked after elderly, and she documented their regrets, and like the top 5 most common or something like that. Like one of the top 5 was not living for me. Right. And if you don't know who you are, if you don't know what's important to you, if you don't know what your passion is, how can you live for you? All right. So I would suggest going along that route. Anyway, waffling, back to useful content. So the 3-step system I use to go from thinking everyone secretly hated me to thinking everyone secretly wanted to be me. And it's not so secret because I had a couple of friends basically try and copy me and go out with the girls I went out with and stuff like that. So I did something right. Like, I don't say that to brag, but obviously I did something right. People noticed the change in me. It was basically recognize where you're at, break your state, and build up the new one. And that building up is really important, but I'd say the most important is actually breaking the state. Because if you don't break the state, you can link them. And then when you do have positive experiences, you could end up feeling bad because you had a positive experience. The classic one for this is in marriages. Very quick story, where you have the honeymoon phase and you hug and everything's wonderful and it feels really nice to have the hug, and then you have, like, you go back to the real world and you go to work or whatever, and you have a couple of bad days and your wife or your husband gives you a hug and all good. Over time, if you associate had a bad day with get hug from partner, they come together, and for a while the hug outweighs the bad day, and that's fine. At some point, if you don't do anything to build up the hug, what will happen is the bad day will overweigh it. So then when you're feeling good and your partner comes up and gives you a hug and you go, okay, and you have no idea why, right? Because this all happens slightly out of conscious awareness sort of thing. You've switched the association. You've now associated the negativeness with the hug. So yeah, just breaking the state is really, really important. It makes a clear demarc between yuck and woohoo. And I would say that's probably the most important thing. If all you do is you feel bad and then you break your state, in order for you to break your state, you actually have to change it, right? So if you feel bad and you break your state, and then after a couple of minutes you're back to feeling bad, guess what? You broke the cycle. So this period of not feeling bad, while it's not great, it will, over time, it'll get longer and longer, just because that's the way behavior works. So unless you do something to reactivate the bad sooner, so it's really important that you break your state. It's arguably the most important part. And there's heaps of ways you can do it. Like I said, for me, it was standing. I know people that will go exercise. If they feel in a funk, they'll go for a run. I do that sometimes, typically in the morning, because I don't like running when it's hot. Swimming's great for me. I enjoy that one as well. Rowing, when I was actually in my place, rowing was what I used to get out of that. I would go row because it hurt and it beat cutting myself. And I would row until I couldn't, and then I'd have to carry the boat and put it away. But it worked, right? And I think these days there's a lot more available for people if you're willing to ask for help. Moving on to my favorite 3 ways. If you have any questions, just ask them as well, either in the chat or in comments. My 3 favorite ways to overcome anxiety. So the quickest is a modification on, I guess, the anxiety protocol, or what's it called? Fast phobia cure. Essentially, to understand anxiety, a very quick psychology lesson. Now, I'm not a psychologist, right? I'm a hypnotist, a hypnotherapist, a dad, and a guy that's been through depression and tried to kill himself. Didn't. Disclaimer. Disclaimer. My understanding is that you can't have anxiety without some sort of expectation about something that either has already happened or is going to happen. In either case, you're not focused on what is right now. So if you have anxiety about the past, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I could have said something better. Oh. You can't change it, right? You can change your association to it. You can turn it into a good thing. You could make it the reason that you become a multimillionaire because you let that person down or whatever. Like some people have done that. You can change your association. If it's in the future, unless you have a track record of successfully predicting negative events, in which case go buy a lotto ticket, or not in case you're convinced you won't win, in which case pick the numbers that you know you shouldn't pick. There you go. If it's in the future, it hasn't happened yet. So what you can do is change your association to it. The easiest way to do that is to go after the event. So if you have anxiety about the past, guess what? You're after the event. So you can ask a simple question. What was something good I can take out of that? What is a silver lining? Every cloud has a silver lining. What's the silver lining? What can I learn from it? What can I take out of it that is constructive, useful, and positive? Phrase it positively. So what's something I feel anxious about? I used to have a fear of spiders, phobia, anxiety, kind of similar. And I moved from New Zealand to Australia. You guys have big ass spiders here, man. Like big. Even your tiny spiders are big. So with my fear of spiders, I had a nightmare when I was a child, when I was about 11 or something, that spiders were crawling all over me, and I was paralyzed. Like one of them bit me, and I was paralyzed or something. I don't know where I got this from, and I was screaming. I was screaming, and no one was coming. But this was in the dream, and I woke up, and my dad was shaking me. So obviously, I had also been screaming in real life, and my bed was saturated. I had a massive cold sweat. And just from then on, I had a fear of spiders. One of the things I did a few things with this, because for a long time I believed that spiders could actually kill you, which turns out after a few first aid trainings is not the case if you're a healthy adult. If you're a child or already ill, then you're in trouble. But if you're a healthy adult, you're pretty good, save for the one down in Sydney. You guys are crazy. That one's dangerous. Funnel web. Is it Sydney or funnel web? I don't know. Anyway, so what I did was I went, okay, I don't actually have any personal experiences of spiders killing me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be alive. So I'm going to change my association. If a spider's near me, I'm going to remove it. If it's not bothering me, if it's not near me, then I'm just going to leave it and see what it does. So I'm going to change my association to the thing that freaked me out. I'm partially associating, so I'm getting the feels back. And what this meant was I went from no spiders in the house to no spiders in my bedroom. No spiders in my bedroom to no spiders on my bed. Now, between my wife and I, we sort of catch them and put them outside because, you know, they're living, they're just doing their thing. So for an anxiety, say someone has a social anxiety, I think it's a good one for the Node Fighter group, from what I've heard. Anyway, if you have a social anxiety, you will have imagined references. You may have some real references as well. You will have references which you think are true, where you've had a negative experience in a social situation. And it could be as simple as you were in a group and you said something and no one responded, right? That happens a lot, happens to, I guess, everyone at some point. The key thing to do here is when you look back at that experience, look at it from everyone else's point of view. What was going on? You know, maybe some of them didn't hear you. Maybe they did. Maybe they were ignoring you. Maybe you shouldn't be friends with people who ignore you. You know, there's lots of different ways to look at it. And I'm not going to tell you who to be friends with. You're all adults, I hope. And I'd say you're all mature, but I don't know. And some people don't think I'm mature. So I don't think it's a prerequisite to be an adult. With your past, you can always change your association to it. Doesn't matter how horrific it is, you can always change your association to it. And the easiest way to do that is to imagine looking back at it and asking yourself, what can I learn? What positive thing can I take out of this? And phrase it positively. Not, don't hang out with those people. That's a negative. Find people who build me up to hang out with. That's a positive. Same message, although I'd argue that the latter is actually better, obviously, because it's positive. By doing that, you can allow yourself to let go of any negative associations you have with that past event. I'm going like this, it's off camera, past event over here. Because for me, the past is behind me, but I'm doing it this way so you can see it. For the future, you can actually do the same thing, believe it or not. So what you do is you go, here's now, and I'm scared about public speaking. I have massive anxiety about asking Frank out. Whatever it is. It hasn't happened yet. You do not know the outcome. As much as you think you might, you could get hit by a bus. And then this will never happen, right? So you don't actually know. You could get taken away by an old friend and have a fantastic time at the movies or something like that. You don't know. The closer it gets, obviously, the better you can predict, but it's irrelevant. The fact is you still don't know for certain. So what you can do is you can go from now to after. And then you look back. So if you imagine yourself, so here's the future event. If you imagine yourself going to 10, 15 minutes afterwards, after the best possible outcome, right? After the best possible outcome. Now, there's a very specific reason for this. If you get the best possible outcome, you feel good. If you spend all your time worrying before you get to the event, and it turns out in the best possible way, you have just wasted a whole bunch of energy worrying. If you know that you're going to get the best possible outcome, so you feel good, and you then get the worst possible outcome, then you can deal with it. You haven't spent the whole time worrying, so you haven't wasted all that energy. If anything, you've built up energy. You're in a much more resourceful state. Now, I realize for some people this is going to be like, what? How do I do that? That's crazy. You're talking like some kind of gypsy that wants $50 to read my cards or something. No offense to gypsies. I think card reading is kind of interesting. Anyway, so kind of like the other process, just find yourself a comfortable space. Close your eyes if it's easier. For some people it will be, some people it doesn't matter. Just imagine the event, whatever it is, and we'll go with that event. Just imagine the best possible outcome. So right now, I can see the boat I've just brought. I'm looking at it. I'm having drinks with my wife and the previous owners, and we're talking about their sailing adventures. And I can see It's really nice. It's white. I can hear my daughter saying we have to paint it pink. I don't know if I'm going to paint the boat pink. Sorry. No, my wife wants to get a rainbow sail because that's what she's like. So, and you can see in my physiology, right, that I'm really getting into it. Hopefully you can. But essentially, that's what you do. You get into it. You get into the best possible outcome. And then see what happens. The major situation where this won't work is if you're the kind of person like I used to be, where you absolutely have to know everything that's going to happen. That will drive you mad, most likely, if it hasn't already. As an opinion, not a psychologist. The way I would go about that is if you just can't let go of, if you think you can't let go of having to know, needing to know what's going to happen, think about all the times where you didn't know, because you had lots of times, like learning to walk or read or write or do math or learn another language or drive. Right? There are many examples. The earlier ones are probably better. You're less likely to have negative associations with them. So just take yourself back to those times, and just afterwards, look back, say, oh, yep, I screwed up. Like learning to write, oh man, like, you know, a little B, oh, I messed that up like 50 million times. Like I still do, right? I didn't learn how to spell Wednesday till I was 14. So go figure. By looking back at those experiences, you will create reference points for yourself where you can go, okay, I didn't know what I was meant to be doing. I was just copying, and eventually it worked. So with this thing, which I was freaked out about, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not okay with that, but let's just see. You know, it's okay to not be okay. Being paralyzed by fear, you're not going to get an outcome, and you're just going to stay in a horrible space. So if you're afraid, cool. Do a phasphobia cure on yourself. If you don't know what that is, go after the event. No, it's not a phasphobia cure. So ask me later. That's not what this is about. The next, my next favorite way, and this is brilliant. I love this. It's weird, but it's fun. Fantastic. It's called a drop through technique. So what a drop through technique is basically you have the nebulous feeling which you call anxiety, and it is overwhelming or overpowering, and you know, how do you do anything, right? How can you go out and start a conversation with that person that you like at the coffee shop when you don't know how they're going to respond? Your last partner, I don't know, cheated on you 20 times or something. I don't know. You have reasons, right? You have reasons to feel this way, and they're perfectly valid. They're just not serving you, right? They're there to protect you, and that's fine. But if you can't live your life, it's not so useful. So you have this nebulous feeling of anxiety, however it feels for you. Using the drop through technique, what you do is you go, okay, I am going to experience this in its fullness. Now, this can be a bit confronting. You kind of need to commit to doing it the whole way. It's a process. But basically, what you do is you take your nebulous thing and imagine it's out in front of you, okay? And give it a shape. I'm going to go with that shape because that's easy to make for me right now. And what you do is you cut it in half, right? And then you cut that in half. Yeah. And you do that 3 or 4 times. You end up 3 times half, quarter, eighth. 4 times, you get a 16th. So you've got it, cut it in half, move the other bit off to the side. We'll deal with that in a moment. With the half that's left, cut it in half again, off to the side, deal with that. With the half that's left, cut it in half, off to the side. you get this little bit, which is an eighth, or if you want, go to a 16th, so cut it in half, which is a little teeny tiny bit. With this, just this, feel it. Notice how it's different to all of that, right? It's different. It might be more manageable. It might not be. It's your feeling. I don't know how it's going to feel for you. What I do know is it will feel different. And what you do is you go, okay, I'm going to feel this in its entirety. And however you feel things, feel it. Really feel it from your head to toe. Just go, okay, is this it? Give me all you got. This 16th, this tiny little 16th, give me all you got. Give me everything. Yeah, I'm kinesthetic, so I close my eyes. But however you do it, doesn't matter. Is this all you've got? And feel it. And that phrase, is this all you've got? I find it quite useful. There are other ways to phrase the same thing. Is that all there is? Is there more? Oh, is that it? There's heaps of different ways, like whatever works for you. The important thing is that you are supposing that there is something beyond it, because there is. When you feel it, when you really feel it, your body, your mind gets the message that you're experiencing it. And then you go, okay, now what's on the other side of this? And you drop through it. You, how do I explain this? You imagine yourself stepping through it to the other side, or dropping through to underneath it, or rising above it, whatever. What you do is you go through somewhere else. And then what's there? And whatever you get, cool. And beyond that, so do it again. And beyond that, you do it again. Do this 3 or 4 times. And you will get to a place where you don't know. And you won't know. It'll feel weird. It'll be not what you're used to. You might struggle to describe it. That's fine. That's what you're meant to be. Because guess what? You're not anxious. And from there, feel good, because you may as well, right? So that's the drop through technique. That one actually works with cravings as well, but don't tell anyone I said that, because some people tell that as a bonus for like weight loss or stop smoking. It works fantastic. Next is anxiety to excitement. So this is based off a TED talk I watched. I believe it's a TED talk. I'm going to say it's a TED talk. And the feeling of anxiety is very similar to excitement. They're kind of the same thing, really. It's just the flavor or the intent or mood that's on them. So if you feel anxious, to transform it into an excitement, very simply, you can just say, I'm excited. Like that alone, the more energy you put into saying that alone will do magic stuff to the way you're feeling. The way that I've done this, and I actually had to do this very recently, was yeah. So I was feeling quite anxious about doing a speech. I go to Toastmasters, do speeches, and I'd been told not to do a speech on hypnosis, which is what I'm passionate about, and that's why I went to Toastmasters, to get used to speaking about it. So I got told, don't do a speech on that. Okay. And I forgot that I had to prepare a speech until the day before. So I wrote down some notes about what I was going to talk about. And just before, I was like, oh, this isn't really what I want to talk about. And I changed it at the last minute. And I was quite anxious about this. And well, I told myself a story just before I was getting up. Like, I think that as I was being introduced, in fact, I told myself a story. And the story went along the lines of, this is an experiment. That's all this is. This is an experiment. I believe in the scientific method. I love it. This is an experiment. And I'm going to see whether or not I can ad-lib a speech based off a memory and turn it into a story. That's it. That's an experiment. And my hypothesis was that I couldn't, because I struggled quite a lot to do it in the past, and the stories have been quite lame. I did all right. I could have done a lot better if I'd prepared. But the thing is, going from how am I going to do this? I don't know what I'm doing. To, you know what, this is an experiment. I'm going to see what happens. It's a decision. It's a simple choice that you can make, just like that. And it really is a choice. In some ways, this is the easiest because you only have to make a choice. In some ways, this is the hardest because it's a choice. And a lot of us aren't used to choosing how we feel. And myself included, like I still don't choose how I feel most of the time. Fortunately, I have a default state of happy, so that's okay. But sometimes not. So from anxiety to excitement, this is an experiment would be one way. That's the way I did it. I can think of some others. Let's see what happens. Again, similar concept, changes it from fear to anticipation. Again, you got to think there's a reason you're feeling this way, and it is probably a good reason. And if you can hijack that reason, turn it into a positive. So maybe it's, I was hurt in the past, or people laughed at me, right? So I was hurt in the past, okay? What can I learn? Or, you know, you do that, what can I learn? How can I avoid that? What ways can I avoid that? Or what signs can I spot? You know, that's actually a good one. I've got hurt in the past, what signs can I spot? So as a temporary measure, that's a good one. I wouldn't suggest it as a permanent one, because then you're always going to be looking to prod at people to find like the signs that they're going to hurt you. But as a temporary one, as a temporary measure, that could be quite good. Like if you've got to go out on a date and you're freaking out, that could be quite good as just a quick, you know, okay, cool. I'm going to see whether or not this person gives me the same signs. You know, and a lot of us, we go for the same partners, different names, but same behavior, right? So that could be quite useful. People laughed at me. Well, I'm the center of attention. Of course they're going to laugh at me. I'm a clown. Sorry, it just came to me. But, you know, you could go with that. Like, obviously, if you're not used to being laughed at, then that could be quite a demoralizing and embarrassing situation to find yourself in, and you'd want to avoid it. So, you know, how can I get my message across with these people individually? So different tactic. How can I make this funny to start with? Right. So if they do laugh, it's meant to be funny. And incidentally, if you want to do that, trying to be funny often isn't being normal and just using good pauses. Yeah. At least that's what I heard from stand-up comedians. So that's basically it. We have about 6 minutes left, which is fantastic. The Ring of Power. The Ring of Power. Doesn't really matter. A really good like anchor to do this with is to actually take your ring off and put it down on the ground. You don't have to, you know, if you're on the street. But when you're setting it up, take it off. So do it at home or something like that. Take it off, put it on the ground. Imagine a ring around it. And then that alone should break most of your state. Stand up straight, look up, like head up, forehead up, eyes up to the ceiling. And imagine the times that you felt absolutely most confident that you've ever felt in your life, whether it was winning the spelling bee when you were 5, or you know, riding on the bike with no training wheels. does not matter. Just put some good music on for a minute or two, just absolutely ramp it up, all of the positive confidence experience you've had. Imagine them all out in front of you in that ring, right? And step into it and notice how good it feels. And like feel it in your body, like really feel it. And then step out and then go for powerful. All the times you felt really, really powerful, again, just in the ring, and then step into it and notice how great it feels to feel powerful and confident, and then step out and then do confident, powerful. Laughter depends. I know a guy that trains, and he says falling on the ground laughing. I do literally fall on the ground laughing, but I do not find it a useful resource because it hurts, like it physically hurts me, which makes other people laugh more, which is good for them, not so good for me. So I did powerful, confident, on top of the world, very similar. Love, I did love as well. Apparently that one's important to me. Go figure, family man. So you imagine all these like lights, colored lights or beams, like beaming up Scotty, pillars of light in your circle, and you step into it and you feel it, really feel it. Spend at least like a minute or two on each of these. And when you step out, just play with it, step back in. Yeah, it feels good. I felt in, you left, do the hokey pokey, whatever it is, like it doesn't matter. And just really enjoy that experience. And then once you're happy with it, once you can step into that ring and you feel, English lacks good words for describing stuff sometimes. When you feel really empowered, right? When you feel really good about being you, step out and keep the feeling, and then imagine the ring shrinking down to the size of your ring. If you have a ring, imagine it shrinking down to your ring and put it on. If you don't, imagine it shrinking down to the size of the ring. Pick up the ring, imaginary, and put it on. And then what you do with this is when you know that you're going to need to, so this is like a preemptive measure, when you know that you're going to need to feel really powerful, need more words. I was going to say swooshka. I don't even know if that's German or not. And you want to feel confident for whatever reason, then you don't, obviously if you're wearing a ring, you don't physically have to take it off for this part, although you could. But imagine taking the ring of power off, putting it down on the ground, getting big, see the columns of light, imagine them, step in, and it's important to feel it. Don't step out until you feel it. If you step out before you feel it, then you'll start to associate not feeling it with the ring, and then there's no point doing it because you're just feeling the same. Step into it, feel it, get excited about it, and then step out, put it back on your finger, and go kick some ass. So, 10:58. Yeah, under an hour, just. So if there are any questions, comments, chat box thing, or comments, I will be checking this. This will be recorded. Yes, it's YouTube. Of course it'll be recorded. Thank you, Google. So I'm going to flip the link out to everyone who hasn't seen it, and I'll probably edit this bit out because there's no point them hearing me talk about sending it out to them. All right. So as I said, I'm not going to do a sales pitch or anything on this. I will say if you want to talk about something specific that you are not comfortable asking in the questions, then feel free to message me on Facebook. Other than that, yeah, you guys, you're all fantastic. You're special people. You, like I said earlier, you've probably just lost touch with who you really are, and that's okay, right? That is part of discovering who you are. And I believe every single one of you is an amazing, awesome person worthy of all the love in the world. And I truly believe that. And at one point, I had to believe that in myself. That's why I can believe it in other people. I still believe it about myself, but it's a given now. So if you find yourself in a really bad place, read the Desiderata. It's a fantastic poem, and talk to someone. Use these techniques. Really easy. Like most of them you can do in less than 5 minutes. In fact, most of them you can do in less than 2. So honestly, make that choice. If you're feeling anxious, choose not to. Do something different. And it will feel weird. It'll absolutely feel weird. You will probably feel silly. And you know what? I'd rather feel silly than go back to cutting my wrists. That's, my honest truth. And that's where I was at. I'm not saying you are, but yeah. So peace out. You're awesome. Yeah, I'm going to stop now.